This is My Kind of Weird, a podcast where two people swap and pitch three kinds of media. Something watchable, something readable, and something listenable. To see if each person says at the end of the pod, that's my kind of weird. I'm your host, Anthony Pollock, and joining me today is Aussie cartoonist who loves the morbid things in life, Mr. Tim Burden.
Hey, Anthony, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Tim, are you ready to get weird with me?
Sure, yep.
Always interesting responses to that question. Tim, present your something watchable.
My something watchable is Aeon Flux.
The dream to awaken our world.
You're out of control.
I take control. Whose side are you on?
I take no side.
You're skating the edge.
I am the edge.
What you truly want, only I can give.
You can't give it, can't even buy it, and you just don't get it.
And that's the cartoon from the 90s, the MTV one, not the movie starring Charlize Theron, just to be clear.
Oh, shit. I watched the wrong thing.
Did you really?
Yeah.
You did. Come on, I warned you.
I just, that is to say I watched it many, many years ago, and I just figured it would, don't all good American anime adaptations, aren't they a good version?
Generally terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, they keep talking about Akira, and I'm like, don't do it.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, get the guys that did Train to Busan or something like that. Get some people who are good at what they do.
Yeah. Don't
get the Americans. I still don't know why Scarlett Johansson was in Ghost in the Shell, but hey, that's me. Well, let's talk Aeon Flux.
Yeah, totally. So this is like my favorite thing ever, probably my favorite TV show. Although I've probably got 10 shows I say, oh, that's my favorite show ever, but Aeon Flux is just, it's such a perfect balance of weird, odd visuals, great like visual storytelling. Yep. And I just it blew me away when I saw it for the first time. And I did a rewatch like recently, and it still holds up for me.
How is it different compared to the film?
It's the movie's so boring compared to it. It's like, it's just really plain. They plucked all the weird alien qualities from it. Like, you get all these bizarre details. Like there's alien creatures in the cartoon, but there's nothing like that in the movie. It's just sort of a boring utopian society. Yeah,
I feel like they tried to copy the Matrix and Ghost in the Shell a little bit, or I don't know what happened there.
But like, there's a sequence in the cartoon where she runs out of like eggs, like she doesn't have any eggs to make breakfast, so she sneaks onto this like alien ship and like grabs like eggs from this alien like nest, and it's really weird and surreal, and it's just like and then one of the aliens like sees her and she has to like jump through this like obstacle course to get out, but then spoiler alert, she gets caught and she dies. But that's the nature of Aeon Flux.
Man, I love weird anime.
Yeah.
I'm watching Cowboy Bebop at the moment for the first time.
Oh, for the first time. Yeah,
for the very first time. I know it's just one of those ones I just have never ticked off my bucket list. It's I'm a big sci-fi fan, and everyone that knows me, who knows I like a little bit of anime, has always been like, check out Cowboy Bebop, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get around to it. That Ed character, what the fuck with that character? But that's lots of fun. I just love good weird anime. It's the sort of the dry and dull stuff, which is clearly tapping into some kind of weird child fetish shit that I find myself avoiding. But there's some really good stuff out there.
Yeah, I'm trying to delve more into like the stuff from the 90s, because that's when I sort of started noticing anime. So I'm going back all to these 90s animes that I skipped at the time, and now I'm like, no, I kind of like that old sort of gritty hand animated look, and I just trying to find what I can trying to get what I can find.
Ninja Scroll
Oh yeah,
is a recommendation
that was one of the first.
because I feel like that's I feel like every how old are you, by the way? You late 30s like myself?
Yeah,
or?
late 30s.
I feel like every sort of 13, 14, 15-year-old, when they discovered anime or when they sort of start to move past Dragon Ball Z, they just, and Pokemon, God forbid, they start to seek out different things, and they saw Ninja Scroll, and just because it was R-rated, it's just like, oh, okay, R-rated. Oh, and there's boobs on the cover. Okay, let's put this on. So,
my first anime was probably like Alita Battle Angel. One of my friends like brought it into school for show and tell, and it was the bit where the dog gets chopped in half and all the guts go everywhere, and everyone's like, yeah. It was it's a great moment.
So my something watchable takes us into the depths of space, and in space no one can hear you scream. Because that's right, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Alien.
It doesn't look like an SOS. It looks like a warning.
We seem to have life. Wait a minute, there's movement. What the hell is that?
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism.
I'm surprised this isn't mine.
Yeah. I felt like I had to beat someone to it, and when I checked out your art style, and when we've been talking on Instagram and such, I thought this is definitely a horror guy, so it's a good time to break out Alien. What can we say about Alien? I mean, there's so much that can be said, but for me, Alien is just there's two films that are just the penultimate of sci-fi horror, and that is Alien, and that is also The Thing. Alien is it just taps into so many different genres of horror without even realizing it, and it does it so subtly that not even the viewers read it. I think a lot of people don't really discuss what type of genres of horror that this explores. I mean, with the sort of the isolationist aspect of horror to when the crew of the Nostromo go down onto the planet, and it's almost like a creepy graveyard / almost haunted house kind of aspect of horror right there, to the returning back to the spaceship, the Nostromo, with John Hurt's character with a face hugger on him, and then the alien erupting from the chest, and then there's a bit of a game of cat and mouse and abduction. So there's just so many great aspects of horror in Alien. I feel like because it's so dark and it's so like back in those days, we had what did we have? We had Nightmare on Elm Street, we had Friday the 13th, but I guess we didn't really have anything like this at all. Then there's also the aspect of H.R. Giger's artwork as well. So it's just a fantastic film.
Going back to
scares the absolute crap out of you.
Going back to did we have anything like it? Ridley Scott was influenced by 2001: A Space Odyssey and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So he's basically just grabbed those two things and smashed them together. Also, there's Planet of the Vampires. I think he borrowed a lot from that. I think that's like a movie from like the 50s, sort of like those one of those retro sci-fi movies. The whole space jockey giant alien thing, I think, was borrowed from that movie. But I mean, it's influenced by a lot of things.
I mean, fast forward to now, I probably could have done without knowing who the engineers were. I didn't need to.
I'm gonna I like to separate it in my head. I still think that big space jockey is a different creature to the engineer people. Because if you look at the details in the original Alien movie, that thing has teeth and eyes and a skull. It's like, it's definitely not a helmet. It looks completely different. I think that maybe that's their gods or something. Like they're trying to replicate the space jockey's technology, because it's so much more biological in the original Alien movie. It's so much more HR giggery, it's just it's separate in my head.
100%. It just somehow manages to tap into the fear of the human psyche in ways that few other films have. I think the closest other film which does, but more to a sort of comedic effect, is in the earlier on in the 70s, there was this film called Galaxy of Terror, which was just absolute nonsense.
I think that was that's actually James Cameron's one of his earlier movies. He's not credited as the director, but he was very involved in that. It was almost like his little demo for his Alien movie.
Yeah, probably. It was just absolute nonsense. And, folks, if you want to see a giant worm that somehow has a penis, go watch that film.
It's got some cool imagery, though, aside from that specific scene, but it does have some cool shots, very reminiscent of Alien.
What I really liked about Alien is sort of basic space physics, which is what I really like. For instance, you don't hear any explosions outside of space so much. It sort of sticks to the explosions inside the spaceship. There's like that type of stuff is what I'm really very much a nerd for, because space is a vacuum, right? It's not like your Star Trek and your Star Wars where there's an explosion and a shockwave. There wouldn't be a shockwave because, it's out,
Isn't there a shockwave at the end? I feel like there is an explosion and shockwave, but it's not as flashy or impactful as like Star Wars, where it's sort of in your face, instant, like boom and corny. It's a little bit more. I don't know. They do approach it differently.
Yeah, I think there may be. I know there's definitely one in the second film when the nuke finally goes off and pretty much destroys the planet. But that's on the planet. Don't know about that. But while we're talking about it as well, I really like the way that the past sort of viewed the future. So the way the Nostromo looks like, with the giant, almost supercomputer-ish looking like terminals and all that type of stuff. And I feel like if we were to go out into space, that's probably going to be the size of the computers. I don't think it's going to be tablet-sized.
Well, a lot of people point out how Prometheus, it looks more advanced than Alien, but I kind of hold on to the idea that if you're going to have truckers in space, you're going to have like more basic technology that is known to be more reliable, because, I mean, the more moving parts you have in something, the more complications are going to go wrong. So I think with something like the Nostromo, you'd want like really, like it's almost like a big truck engine with really basic parts, and it needs to be reliable.
Building on that as well, wasn't the idea of the person in charge of that expedition was like the vice president or something of Wayland or something like that? When
you mean in Prometheus?
That, funnily enough, was in Prometheus. Would assume that be sleeker if there was that much money going into one spaceship.
True, that's also another way to kind of retcon it as well and say, oh well, he'd spend more money on his own ship, but it'd be like the Porsche of like spaceships or something.
All right, Tim, present your something readable.
My something readable is the Biological Show by Al Columbia. What did you think of this?
It was bizarre. I've got to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was very bizarre. Yeah. I must say I'm not a fan of the lettering. But give us your pitch.
I don't know. Where do you start with a biological show? It's like, it's just peering into a really disturbed person's mind or something, even though Al Columbia is a really nice guy, but like, it's just, it's got that whole like stranger danger, like creepiness kind of vibe where it's just like, it feels like it's almost taboo and creepy and just it shouldn't exist, and somehow it's just compelling. It's just like you're just morbidly curious about it. It's a whole bunch of short stories, just floating through different like trippy short stories. There's a couple that revolve around Pim and Francie, this like sort of brother and sister, and like they're running around causing trouble and stuff and vandalizing like a neighbor's lawn, but then they get like the brother gets infected by something and he sort of loses his mind a little, and you see him sort of trip out through his perspective, and it's a whole lot of like disturbing imagery. It's sort of I guess it's like, I guess the closest like film equivalent I can compare it to is like a David Lynch movie or something, or what's that movie called? Is it the Reflective Skin? I think have you ever seen The Reflective Skin?
No, I haven't.
I always
like the sound of it though.
It's a weird movie from, it was like, came out in 1990, but it's just this kind of odd sort of, it's got a bit of that isolating kind of feel to it. It's almost like that painting, Christina's World. I'm not sure if you know, but if you Google the painting Christina's World, it's got that sort of soft loneliness in the country, and it's a bit haunting. So I'd say there's something kind of haunting about the Biological show. It's I guess you'd call it a horror comic, but it's more like comics are never going to like make you jump out of your seat, but they can leave you feeling a little disturbed or a little creeped out or unsettled. It's probably the best descriptor.
Yeah, you see, you read reviews of people that have read horror comics, and they're just like, "Oh, I jumped off my seat," and I'm just like, "What are you doing?" Like, I don't know. I've never been scared by a horror comic. I've been creeped out. I mean, I think, and I've been uncomfortable. Recently read Ed Piskor's Red Room, like as a as the first volume, and that, I must admit, it kind of made me feel uncomfortable. Not really the subject matter as much as his style of illustration is a little bit uncomfortable.
It's very gritty looking. It's very like
it is. Yeah.
It reminds me of like some, if you ever look into like Japanese like manga and stuff, they delve into some really good horror stories. Everyone always points to like Junji Ito and stuff, but there's some great they've come up with there's a lot of great horror imagery if you check out Japanese comics.
I saw a bit of Dadaist influences in this, or at least what I feel like may have been influenced by Dadaism a bit. Was that just you, or was that just me? Sorry, or did you see that as well? Or?
In certain comics, where we're talking Biological show, right?
Yeah.
In certain short stories, I can definitely see that, because he would go on sort of a rant, and it would be almost like sort of like a poem almost, and you'd sort of jump around to different shots and different scenes. I'm just trying to pick up the book and try to see, because I feel I'm trying to think, did I see like a urinal, or am I just thinking of literally a Dada like piece? Because whenever I think of Dada, I think of that urinal and he just wrote on the urinal. It's just like, yep, it's an artwork. It's just like definitely.
I also find it hard to sort of differentiate between Dadaism and Grant Morrison's, or most of Grant Morrison's work. Especially Doom Patrol.
I need to delve into more of Grant Morrison. We had some Doom Patrol issues when I was a kid. Like, my brothers had this pile of superhero comics, and oddly enough, Doom Patrol always stood out because it just wasn't like any of the other superhero comics. And I've read the first installment of The Invisibles, like the first volume or so, and I need to like reread it because people just swear by it, and I'm like, it hasn't grabbed me completely, but I can understand this being pretty revolutionary for when it came out, because I think The Matrix borrowed a lot of ideas from it. But I need to give it a reread.
The Matrix did with sci-fi like what Harry Potter did with fantasy, right?
Very true.
Constant plagiarism.
Well, I would rather get a Matrix or a Harry Potter than get a really bad adaptation of something, because I think maybe we should because film is such a completely different medium. We should be playing to the strengths of film instead of like badly adapting, like a book and trying to squeeze in all this information. It's like, oh, they skipped my favorite part in this from the book. But maybe we should just be, instead of getting an Akira movie, maybe we should get a movie that's inspired by Akira. Like that would intrigue me way more.
I remember seeing some discourse that apparently that what is it? Was it Alita Battle Angel? I haven't seen it yet, but some people were trying to say that was influenced by Akira. Is that correct? Or?
No, it's based on a comic, a manga, and James Cameron's had the rights for it for like a decade or two, and then it finally came out.
Yeah.
Was it 2017 or whenever? I didn't mind it. I loved it when it first came out, but on rewatches, I'm just like, it's solid. It's a really solid movie. I wouldn't mind seeing more of it. I'd like to see a sequel.
Yeah, no, that's good. I prefer those films where there's rewatch ability. If it's just outstanding. I just think of Tenet when I think of this. That's just visually amazing, but I just don't see any reason why I would go watch it again.
I sat through 10 minutes of Tenet and I was done. I was just like, no, I'm not doing this. Sorry, Christopher Nolan, I'm not doing this. But I'm not. I don't praise Christopher Nolan as most people. I think I like the Batman movies. They're all pretty cool. But I thought like maybe The Dark Knight is when he stopped being perfect. Even though The Dark Knight's a great movie, but I think that's when he stopped being perfect in my mind. I think all his movies before then were like very methodical and very well thought out, but then I just think he started cracking during The Dark Knight. That's all. Yeah. So I love The Prestige. I think that's amazing. That's probably my favorite by him.
So my something readable is Borrowed Time, which is a 3-issue comic book series, but for the purpose of this, we'll just talk about the first issue. Written by Tyrone Long, and he's actually a listener of the podcast. He sent me his comic about 2-3 weeks ago. He said, hey, I think you'll like this. And then I said to him, hey, I'm actually going to talk about it. So by Tyrone, it's by a artist also called Spike O'Lakda, I think it's pronounced, which I probably just butchered that. And then the colorist is Isai Manaki. It's a comic book that's pretty dark. There's a lot of discussions around, and I guess narrative around suicide, depression definitely, not being happy with, I guess, one's sort of state in one's own universe, and the idea that you should be allowed to let someone have their time when they feel it's their time to go. So I read it as it having a bit of, I guess, a view that we should let someone have their own ownership over whether they feel it's their time to go or not. Whilst at the same time, it also has this sort of B plot, which starts and ends the comic, which is about this guy who I guess he's been sort of reconstituted by this sort of alien force, which is watching the Earth 4.5 billion years from now as it's sort of being engulfed by our sun, which is now a red sun. So, and then the sort of the very kind of beautiful way it finishes, spoilers everyone, is the character who has had the overdose that this alien force has reconstituted. This alien is taken sort of the form from this drug user's own mind, and that form is, we assume, is like a loved one. And there's just kind of that kind of nice little narrative of, even though the world is about to die, like at the end of the world, he just wants to be with the person he loves. He just wants to be with her. He just wants to touch and hold her. So in that way, it kind of takes the bleakness of the main plot of the story, which I'm not going to go into, which goes into a lot of sort of dark stuff, and kind of ties it off quite neatly. There's another 2 issues after it, of course, but I felt like this could have been a standalone, and I would have been pretty happy with it.
I'm not sure. You said Tyrone's the writer.
Yeah.
So he's a listener. I'm worried about offending him, but I thought the writing was really good. I thought the art was really good. I'm just not sure if they go together. That's the thing, because like you said, it is essentially a lot of dialogue, a lot of characters talking, and yet the art is more sort of like that kind of like McFarlane, Jim Lee kind of superhero style sort of look to it.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure.
It's early '90s DC almost. That's what it reminded me of.
But they're both good. Like the artist is, I'll happily admit, is a better artist than me, and the writing was good. It was compelling. It kept me going, kept me reading. But I just thought maybe I could imagine it being more like an indie comic, like something where the artist would be like Ethan Van Sciver or something, or like something Fantagraphics-y, or is it is it Noah Van Sciver? There's two brothers. They both do comics, and one's like an indie guy, one's a superhero guy. So I'm probably mixing them up. But there's this other artist I've recently discovered, like Josh Simmons, like just these sort of like a bit more of a cartoonier style. I think could have probably suited something so heavily dialogue based. And but it's still kept me. I still kept reading. I know we're going to just talk about the first issue, but I read issues 2 and 3, and I really liked issue 3. Actually, issue 3 almost had me eating my words, because it starts to get. It is still heavily dialogue based, but it actually takes advantage of the artist style towards the end of it, and you see some like creepy horror visions, and it's actually I was eating my words by the end of it, going, okay, maybe the artist does suit this story. But I don't know, I'm a bit mixed whether it belongs or not, but the artist is really good. Like he has some really great imagery in issue 3. It's really cool.
I like I agree with that. I don't know if you had an artist who wasn't as talented, I don't know how they would approach the end of the world motif that starts, and because it's very detailed, it's the way the sun looks with almost like solar flares all over it. It would be very hard to accomplish for just a standard independent artist. How
do you feel about the floating like collage style compositions? When a comic doesn't have your traditional panels and dividers and stuff, like, and it's all the pictures sort of overlapping one another, and you're kind of trying to figure out the order of things. Are you a fan of that, or does that sort of distract you?
I find that there needs to be an even balance, doesn't there, between, like, if there's a lot happening on the page artistically, then you probably shouldn't have as much dialogue happening. We're just talking in general here. I'm helping edit a comic or a couple of comics at the moment, so this is stuff that we're kind of going into. I find it just comes down to sort of like a happy medium of the two. If you've got a lot happening on the page artistically, then maybe you shouldn't have as much happening dialogue-wise. But then I can eat my words because I love Sandman, and Watchmen and all those greats. I feel like it's really in the eye of the beholder. But for me, it's just about finding that balance. And I would agree that in the first issue, when the nurse with the gun and sort of the jilted wife in clown makeup, fuck knows why,
she's a juggler,
sort of having that. Yeah, they're kind of having that extremely long discussion. I felt like there was too much. I would probably, if I was to look at it from an editing perspective, I would probably argue that during that discussion, because there's a lot of story that's talked about as by the nurse holding the gun about different really people that have killed themselves, and you probably could have lost at least one of those examples, one of the stories she tells, because it gets to a point where it's kind of like, where is this going? Is this just because it does get to probably 2/3 in, you kind of thinking, is this just a narrative on suicide?
Yeah, I was getting
Where
like
are you going
sorry.
with this?
I was
No,
getting
no, you're right.
I was getting like Magnolia flashbacks. If you've ever seen the movie Magnolia, they do little like vignettes of like people offing themselves in different way and stuff, and they just tell little short stories, and they connect in little weird ways, and it's sort of what it reminded me of. But yeah, I guess the whole series is meant to be kind of an anthology, isn't it? Because in the second issue, you're following different characters again, but it's still being told by the alien talking to the guy. The guy's offed himself or overdosed or whatever. But the second issue really leans into that whole like collage kind of style, which it's not that it's hard to follow, but it does, I think, distract you from what's going on. By the time they get to the third issue, though, they sort of abandon that, and it's more traditional panels, and I think it worked a lot better. But I really like that third issue. You should, if you haven't read it, you should really keep going.
I'll do exactly that. Now, present your something listenable.
I was leaning towards going, should I go full disturbing weird with all three of my picks, or should I go sort of fun weird? So, Aeon Flux is fun weird to me. Biological Show is disturbing weird. And then I went, let's go another disturbing weird for listenable. And I went with the album by this punk band called Daughters. And the album is called You Won't Get What You Want. What did you think of this?
So when I was in my early 20s, I went through this huge IPACAC recordings and Hydra Head recordings and phase. So I'm familiar with them, but I must admit I have only listened a handful of times to Daughters. But I believe that this album is where they went completely off-brand and off-kilter and went with a totally different style. Because weren't they a bit mathcore-ish?
Yeah, a little. Like it's a lot more punky and rocky, the previous album before this, which is also a good album, but this one's a lot more atmospheric compared to it. It's a lot more like some of the tracks aren't even like heavy or rock songs. I discovered this, it was on Spotify. I saw the album cover to this, and I'm like, sometimes I see an album cover, and I'm like, I wonder if it sounds like what it looks like. I have this weird sort of connect, like, I'm like, oh, that is a disturbing looking album cover. I wonder if it's going to be disturbing music, because I like listening to creepy, odd music at times, like, I'll get into like Sano and Godspeed You Black Emperor and stuff. And, it just looked like, oh, this is going to be a weird, arty, like, atmospheric kind of album, or is this going to be completely different? And they've sort of misled me. And I listened to the first track. It was City Song, which isn't even one of my favorite songs on the album, but it already just establishes the tone. And it's just like, okay, I'm in for a creepy time. And I think the first time I went through the whole thing, it probably gave me like anxiety. It just made me anxious. And it was just, I don't know, it has such an oppressive, creepy atmosphere. And, you go to track 2, Long Road, No Turns, and it sounds like you're being chased through the darkness. That's how I'd describe that song. It's just, you're being chased by something and you're just running for your life.
Nice.
The third track, "Satan in the Wait," I don't. This is a bit weird, but if you've ever seen those like those evidence photos of what's that murderer who tried to make zombies out of people? Someone made a comic about him recently. Who am I thinking of? Dahmer,
I can't
Jeffrey
think of it.
Dahmer. If you see,
Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah.
there's some like crime scene photos, and like I get those visuals of those horrible photos of his, his acts and stuff, and I get that in my head when I listen to that song, and it's I don't know, it's a really disturbing album if you want to like delve into it. Like the song Less Sex, that reminds me of that Uncle album, War Stories, which is another great album. I was tempted to pick that. Then The Reason They Hate Me is I think that's meant to be the single. It's pretty catchy. But the last song, Guest House, is just, it wasn't my favorite song at first, but it's slowly, I think, become number one. It's just really in your face at first, and then it just breaks out into like, it just gets more and more intense, and then it ends in like an orchestra, like just string music, and it just gets really pretty at the end. It's just, and then it's just over, and you're just like, what did I just listen to? It's a journey. It's a great album.
Nice. My something listenable is Gore by Deftones. Now, you and I have spoken on Instagram about my love of this album, and you're not convinced. So, you like it, but not as much as other Deftones albums, I believe.
Deftones are like literally my favorite band. They have been since high school. But the Gore isn't a bad album. It's just my least favorite by them. I think it starts really strong. I think it meanders in the middle of the album, and then it finishes relatively strong. But it's just, I think the whole album is missing an element. And I do believe the guitarist, Steph Carpenter, he was having trouble with his guitar, and he just wasn't as present as he could have been. So I think Chino and I think Sergio's the bass player, I think they kind of took a lot of the writing leads. And I think a lot of fans tend to complain about the mix of this album because it isn't... it feels a bit tinny. I don't know if tinny's the right word, but there's one moment where you hear the drummer, like he hits the tom drum, and it is literally a buzz. Like it's almost like they didn't record it properly, and you get like this buzz from it. But some people, I guess, are a fan of the way it's recorded. I know there's different ways to produce things, so like maybe I'm wrong, but.
See, the meandering in the middle and the finishing and starting strong, that's what I feel like a Deftones album should be like. There's a lot of their albums, like previous to releasing Gore, which I feel are just lost for me.
Really?
There's just a lot of albums after, like I find there's albums where they have, like Saturday Night Rest, there's good tracks on there, but as an album, it doesn't feel as much like a journey for me. When I listen to an album, I should feel that I need and want to listen to it the whole way through. I don't like an album which feels incomplete or where the songs feel like they've been added haphazardly and it doesn't feel as... What I'm basically trying to say, Tim, is I'm a huge concept albums fan. Yeah. So when I find an album where I don't feel like the songs fit, I am not a fan of that album. Like the biggest example I can use is I'm a huge Tool fan, and the most recent Tool album is very weak in comparison. It sounded like Lateralis B-sides. It's just not a fun... It's not Tool, not the Tool I'm used to hearing. So
I thought the same thing about 10,000 Days, but that's actually grown on me since it first came out. But
I think what saves that is it has a lot of really rock tracks, which I think saves it, and then it still has that sort of ambient, ambient wankery that they sort of delve into, which is
I
which you used
like
to.
the ambient wankery sometimes. I think that's what the latest album is missing, is that kind of weird stuff like that they'd put on, like,
Yeah.
you know, like a German recipe for, what was it, like chocolate cake or something, but it sounds like a Nazi rally, and it's just like I like the weird stuff that they put in between songs. It's just, yeah, I think the latest one's missing that.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's do the verdicts. So, Tim, out of my something weirds, what were your picks? What did you like? Did you think any of those were your kind of weird?
Alien is definitely my kind of weird, because that is my favorite movie of all time. I could keep talking about it and do a TED talk if you like, but maybe I'll just start my own podcast, and it'll just be what I think about Alien, and I'll just go for years. Just the first movie, yeah. I could talk about the whole series, but I'm a huge fan of Alien, so yeah, that's, I don't know, what do you call that? 10 out of 10, 2 thumbs up. Yeah, of course, love Alien.
Yeah. Out of your picks, I wasn't convinced with your something readable. It just wasn't quite my thing. I don't think I'll try and revisit it, but that's just me. That's, you know. As far as your something listenable, I think I might add that to my playlist. And see if I can get more into that than I already am. Your something watchable is clearly I need to go watch The Right Thing. So
yes,
yeah,
yes. Try and find the DVD if you can, because it's an excellent. It's like a 3-disc DVD, and it has all the little short films that they made before the proper show, and it's got the whole season. It's an amazing DVD box set.
I'll do that. All right, everyone, we're going to go on a quick sponsor break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with Tim about Morbid Sheep Comics.
Ladies, gentlemen, and androgynous life forms, are you sick of hairy balls? Do you find yourself scratching your nether regions as you trudge through the wastelands, yearning for a smooth and sultry happy sack? Are you longing for the days of a pair of rusty hedge clippers as you bathe in the festering fluids of a giraffe's radioactive corpse? Well, fellow wastelanders, Kmart 3000 has the solution for you. Introducing the aptly named and definitely not radioactive bar of Green Light Soap. Ideal for almost any situation. The Green Light Soap not only removes ball hair, it cleans you and leaves you feeling fresh at the same time. Greenlight soap is so good, we asked a group of wastelanders to test it out, who couldn't be here today. But trust me, they are fine. Everyone is fine. The Greenlight soap is packed with a fun array of features which have to be seen to be believed. Side effects may include, but not limited to, tingling, rashes, blood-soaked spores, cancer, grower testicles even if you never had one in the first place, crabs, no, not the STD ones, silly, the actual crabs, permanent shrinkage, mouse, cancer, leakage, extra nipple growth, belief in conspiracies, another butt, bright glowing penis, cancer. Right now, Kmart 3000 is giving you the opportunity to try out your very own bar of Greenlight soap at an embarrassingly low rate. Head to Kmart3000.com if you can find the internet and use the checkout code NOTPLUTONIUM. That's Kmart3000.com, code NOTPLUTONIUM. Hurry now, folks. Why give your old lady a pubic fright when you can bathe in the pleasure of a green light? Pay no attention to the green glow when you scrub below. And now, back to your regular scheduled programming.
All right, Tim, so you, I guess, publish under Morbid Sheep Comics, self-publish, and for those who are just listening and never checked out your work, the best way I could describe it is if Tim Burton had an ounce of some cartooning genius, if you will, he might come up with something like this. But how would you describe Morbid Sheep Comics to those who haven't seen your work?
I always do the same elevator pitch to everyone. I just say it is Alice in Wonderland meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's basically little girl going through this creepy landscape. It's like, you know, when you have the final girl in a movie and she's just sort of running around trying to survive, and there's like, you know, there's no dialogue in those sort of scenes. It's all visual storytelling. So it's a lot of that. It's just visual storytelling, and it's telling horror through weird visuals. And I also, you know, like I said, I'm a big Alien fan, so I'm really influenced by the weird aspects in Alien. You know, like when they go in the derelict spaceship and you just see all this weird Giga imagery. I love stuff that's unexplained, where you go, what the hell is that thing? And you know there's a history to it. I love doing that stuff. Like I'll make characters up, or I'll make these devices or machines up, and there's a logic to them that I know, but I don't tell people, and maybe I'll let them sort of figure it out for themselves and figure out things work, and basically just try to creep them out.
I think yours does that. With HR Giga's work, I think the one logic was everything has to be a clitoris or a vagina.
Well, yes, of course.
That's what his logic was.
Yeah, totally.
What are you, you're from, where are you from, Melbourne?
I'm in Sydney at the moment, yeah. I live in Sydney.
Okay,
I've been here since I was 9, yeah.
How have you found, as Australia gets back into things, have you been to any cons to get your work out there to new fans? How have you found that experience?
Well, I've had like 3 conventions since the pandemic started. Like we've just had little bouts where it's like, oh, things are getting back to normal. So then they hold a convention, and yeah, I've had a table. I've done it like 3 times now. The first one was at an Oz Comic Con last year, and then there was a Supernova, and then another Oz Comic Con at the end of last year. And I'm hoping to do a few more this year.
First one was that was the one where they said there's no one from out of state coming in. It's just, this is what it is. Let's see how we go.
It was meant to focus on creators. I think it was like homegrown or something. It had some subtitle where it was trying to focus on creators, but it was good. I don't know. It's debatable. I mean, could always do things better, but still, it's a hard thing to pull off these conventions. There's a lot of moving parts. So but I got to meet a lot of great new fans and stuff, and it's awesome. Met a few people, and yeah, it's been great. I really enjoy meeting people. It's exhausting, but I love meeting new people and introducing my work to them.
I feel like with cartoonists, there's a certain type of comic fan who gets into that style. What do your fans look like?
Goths and metalheads, basically. Yeah. But
figured as much.
You'll get the odd person who likes that stuff, but doesn't dress up accordingly. But there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as long as you're goth and metal on the inside, that's all that matters.
What are you working on at the moment?
So I've got a anthology that's coming now. I'm part of an anthology called Death Candy, and we've basically got a lot of artists who are influenced by, like, Tim Burton and Al Columbia and, like, Jonan Vasquez, those sort of black and white goth, like, kind of cartoons. And we're sort of doing a whole bunch of short stories. And I've got 2 short stories in the first issue that's coming out. We had a Kickstarter. It went really well. So that's going to be sent out relatively soon, I'm hoping. I think there was a slight delay just due to, all the moving parts. But it's on its way. And I'm going to be in future issues. So I'm working on some short stories for that. I'm currently working on Chapter 5 of Misery Miss Muffet. So I've released a graphic novel, which was the first 3 chapters, and I did a little preview chapter. So it's Chapter 4 I've released as a little single issue. So that's available if people want to check it out, or they can get the whole thing, or they can just wait for the next graphic novel, which will be chapters 4, 5, and 6. But I'm really excited to show people this one, because it's the story's been sitting in my head for years, and this is like finally piecing it together, and I've just found the right balance for it. So I'm really keen for people to see it.
I find that we're not really experiencing so many teething issues with getting, like, Aussie creators aren't finding as many teething issues with getting comics out there to people as our American counterparts. What with the paper shortage. What is your commentary on that?
I don't have a comment on that. I don't know what to say about that.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, because wasn't there a big issue with Diamond? Is it Diamond Publishing? They're the guys who do the whole DC and Marvel printing, or they're the distributors or something. I'm not. I don't keep tabs on the whole mainstream comics, like superhero stuff. Nothing against it. It's not my thing. I'm more of a graphic novel alternative kind of stuff is what I tend to gravitate towards.
Nothing wrong with that. Where can people find you online and check out your work?
You can find me on my Instagram. So my Instagram handle's Morbid Sheep Comics, at Morbid Sheep Comics. I'll get a website up soonish because I need to put up a store. I found people don't like just messaging me personally and go, can I get something? And I have to like just talk to them. I think they just want a cold e-shop that they can just order something and not have to interact with me. Because
what we're in, my friend. No one wants to talk to anyone.
No.
They just want to.
I'll just talk their ear off about Alien and Deftones and stuff, and they're just I don't care. Leave me alone. Yeah. But no, people are cool. I don't mind chatting to people if they're into the same stuff, and they'll recommend stuff to me, and I'll recommend stuff to them. It's a fun cultural exchange, just like this. You know, I like recommending stuff to people.
All right, that's all we've got time for today, everyone. So thanks for tuning in, Tim. Thanks for being part of this, and thanks for being part of the first episode in about 8 months. So I'm going to go check out some of your stuff and probably buy one of your comics.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
That's all right, my friend. And for now, everyone, stay weird, and I'm going to leave you all with some nice tones of whale mating calls. See you later, everyone.
Or I can just keep screaming into the mic if you like, and just, or we can do the TED Talk about Alien. Or I can make the whale sounds if you like. Just let me try.